Haunting organ music belted out while thunder rumbled as Sai laughed, dressed in fancy, yet menacing attire. "Behold, mortals, I have gained the powers of a vampire," he declared, laughing again as bats swarmed all around him. Ruby gasped at this. "Awesome! Vampires," she said, clapping excitedly, along with a few other fans of the night creatures. "Yes, I am so here for this," Blake agreed eagerly. "They are always quite interesting," Glinda said, secretly a closet fan of romance novels the creatures appear in.
Yes.
"Very interesting," Summer said, having shared a few of those romance novels with Glinda. "I like that a lot of them are shapeshifters." Neo added, "I'm a fan myself. I love the raw power they have as true apex predators. That's how they should be known instead of the over-sexualized versions in media," Adam declared, Hazel nodding in agreement. "I'm quite intrigued at the mystery behind them. I wouldn't mind learning the science behind them," Penny admitted. "There is no real science behind the supernatural, Penny. Sorry to burst your bubble," Blake told her. "So, Sai's a vampire now, huh? That's cool," Yang said. "But how did he manage to turn himself into one? He should be immune to becoming one via bite transmission, since he's a demon immune to disease or infection."
Weiß analyst.
Katana gave them a basic crash course on demons to understand the abilities of herself and her family. "Honestly, there's so many different ways throughout different mediums, who knows?" Cinder asked, a bit of a vampire nerd herself. Reggie looked on in shock atop his stack of books. "Sai, what's going on here? What on earth happened to you?" The Wyverian scholar questioned in shock at the sapphire star's sudden transformation. Sai laughed once again at the scholar's question. "Is it not obvious, Reggie? I have rejected my humanity and become a night creature that feeds on blood," the host declared yet again as thunder clapped yet again. However, for some reason, Reggie didn't seem all that impressed. "You're a demon. You had no humanity to reject in the first place. And aren't demons already stronger than vampires? This can only be a minor boost in power for you, if anything. In fact, it may even be a detriment," the scholar pointed out as he began looking through his books, as if there wasn't a blood-sucking monster in front of him. "Well, he's not wrong. You can't reject your humanity if you're not human," Glinda agreed with the elderly scholar. "Not to mention, like he said, demons are usually stronger than vampires. The bloodsuckers honestly aren't usually that much stronger than humans and aren't that much harder to kill, whereas demons usually require building busters to bring down," Hazel added, which really makes you wonder why Sai thought this was a good idea in the first place.
Adam questioned.
"The Fatali's armor is probably finally getting to his brain." Razara called her uncle's sanity into question. Sai scoffed at the audacity of the elderly Wyverian before him. "Foolish mortal, what possible disadvantages could come from being a vampire?" the host questioned as the bats finally stopped swarming. Reggie seemed to shake his head as he muttered something under his breath. "Well, for one thing, all the weaknesses vampires have that demons don't have. Like, how are you even out in the sunlight right now?" the elderly Wyverian questioned, without even looking up from his books. The sound of a record scratching and crickets chirping could be heard, before the host spontaneously combusted. Perhaps this wasn't the best idea, Sai admitted, but didn't seem all that concerned about the fact he was on fire. "Oh yeah, that might put a pretty big damper on things when he bursts into dash," Yang began before. As if on cue, the host soon ignited into flames. Many were worried for the sapphire star, but then found themselves surprised when he barely reacted to bursting into flames, even getting a chuckle out of some of them. "Oh, man. If I knew being on fire was just an inconvenience, I wouldn't worry nearly as much when dodging fireballs from manticores and sphinxes," Coco said with a smirk. "He probably just has a higher pain tolerance. Still, this is a good lesson for why being a vampire isn't all it's cracked up to be. Ron said, I don't know, I'd still like to be one. Ruby said, I don't think that'd be a good idea, Ruby. There's way more cons to being a vampire than pros. Katana told her, Blake nodding along. What you talking about? Ruby asked skeptically. Blake then took a deep breath. Sunlight, silver, garlic, not showing up in mirrors, wooden stakes, holy objects, and they can't cross running water. Vampires have a pretty big list of weaknesses, Ruby. She informed her team leader, making the younger girl pout and mumble that vampires are still cool. Sai was seen in combat against a non-existent. Perhaps one of the biggest flaws of humanity is to judge something before we truly understand it, and our tendency to jump to conclusions before we have the full story. And a common victim of these judgments are animals, such as how for decades, we believe pigeons to be disease-carrying rats with wings, or for centuries we believed rats to have been the cause of the Black Plague. We know better now, of course, but the damage to the public image of these animals has already been done. And the same sadly happens to monsters as well, such as how non-existent was seen as a ruinous beast instead of a force of balance in nature, or our monster for today's discussion. Until recently, it has been a source of much mystery, but even more hatred. And so, it's time to shed some light on the Silver Duke Dragon, Malzeno. Sai declared as a very regal, yet menacing elder dragon ran up the side of a ruined tower, before standing tall at the peak of said tower. Ashbin couldn't help but lower his head as Sai spoke of humanity's poor judgment and unfair accusations. Unfortunately, he's not wrong. I'd have to say this fits the people of Remnant to a T, he said in shame. And Ironwood wasn't much better. I know I've certainly fallen under that category. I can't count how many rash decisions I've made throughout my career that had serious consequences. And I'd only continue to do so without Katana's interference. He said, equally guilty. But surprisingly, Crow, of all people, was the one to place a consoling hand on both men's shoulders. Hey, take it easy, guys. James, you're learning from your mistakes and being better for it, and Oz, there's always a chance for people to grow and be better, he said, both men giving small smiles and appreciative nods. Then, many gave a nod of approval at the creature's title. Silver Duke Dragon? I quite like that. It gives it a majestic sound, almost like royalty.
Vice President.
And then, they finally got a good look at the monster, the crowd being divisively split between being awed and intimidated by the beast. Those wings are so red, they look like they've been dipped in blood, John said nervously. And between Sai's intro and how it looks, I think this dragon might be a vampire. Why is a dragon vampire a thing? Velvet said in terror. A better question is, why not? Look at it. It looks so awesome. Ruby exclaimed. I actually have to agree with you, Ruby. It is quite regal specimen. Look at how proudly and boldly it's standing. Like if it's a ruler looking down over its kingdom. Weiss agreed. And just look at that fluffy chest. It looks so soft and puffy. I bet it'd be a great pillow to sleep on, Ruby cooed. Katana's daughters, however, looked horrified at that statement, as they knew what that chest fluff actually was. Ruby? Rosara was about to tell her, but Teko stopped her. Let's let her figure it out on her own. It'll be a nice little surprise. The younger sister said, devil-like horns of ice sprouting from her head. Syra and Firerain were seen facing off against a Malzeno. Now, Malzeno is a very interesting monster, but before we talk about him, we must talk about his greatest enemy, Gazemagorm, and his greatest allies, the Curio. The Sapphire Star began, the familiar illustration of Gazemagorm being shown, before switching to the Flying Lamprey. A dark-skinned man was shown looking at something in horror. Oh, hell no, he declared, quickly turning to run away. Many were horrified at seeing the flying leeches once more. Oh, please no. Weiss, velvet, Pyrrha, and even ironwood said, filled with dread at the memory of the creatures. It's all right, Weiss. Sir, they're only on the screen, and they're not coming to Remnant. You can rest easy, Penny assured her girlfriend and her superior, holding Weiss closely. Ugh, but even just seeing them and remember all the havoc they caused is enough to cause one a panic attack, Pyrrha said, holding onto John's arm tightly. It's okay, Pyrrha. Even if they were coming to Remnant, which they're not. Again, don't worry, I wouldn't let them get you, John assured her, to which she smiled. The focus returned to the illustration of Gazemagorm. Now, we briefly went over Gazemagorm before, but let's recap. 100 years ago, a massive crater opened up in the kingdom that controls the Elgato outpost. Sai began as the crater was shown. During such time, monsters began to become unnaturally violent and aggressive, and a huge plague spread throughout the kingdom, thanks to the curio. And all of this disturbed the surrounding ecosystem, which was the territory of Malzeno. So understandably, our boy was not too happy about this and faced off against the threat. And Malzeno was actually victorious in driving Gazemagorm away. But in the fight, Gazemagorm managed to afflict Malzeno with the curio virus, and the flying leeches tried to feast on Malzeno, but the Elder Dragon was able to resist their attempts, and instead managed to form a symbiosis with the little abominations, becoming their new host. The host explained as several curio-related horrors were seen, such as Fire Rain fainting from their virus, or the afflicted Arzuros. So, Malzeno was protecting the kingdom from Gazemagorm? Awesome! It's a hero dragon. Nora cheered. From the sound of things, it was only defending its territory. The kingdom just happened to be close to its territory, but it did still save the kingdom, even if that was inadvertent. So, yeah, it still has my approval. Summer said, approving of Malzeno's actions, especially since there was something strange about Gazemagorm that was unnerving to her based on the illustration, especially around its mouth. But without better details or an actual look at the creature, she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Once again, Syra and Fire stood before Malzeno, holding the beast back from their allies. Then, 50 years later, the event happened again, a crater destroying a settlement located in a grand citadel, monsters going crazy and people getting sick. But Gazemagorm is a subterranean elder dragon, meaning it was underground where people couldn't see it. Meanwhile, several eyewitnesses saw Malzeno flying above and around the crater, thus all of the blame for these two separate events were placed on the Silver Duke Dragon's shoulders, making it public enemy number 1 of the kingdom and earning it the menacing title of the embodiment of darkness. Yes, because a dragon that maxes out at 81 feet is making craters in the ground the size of football fields. That totally adds up. The Sapphire Star said skeptically as the crater was shown once again. A good chunk of the cast couldn't help but laugh at Sai's snarkiness. I mean, he's not wrong. That crater's way too big for anything smaller than Gogmazios to have done that, Ilya admitted, right? That's like saying I could put a hole in the ground big enough for a Megaliath to fit into, Neo said, rolling her eyes. Man, first people building a city right in Laoshan Meng's path, and now this travesty of a scaling issue. I'm really starting to get concerned about the IQ levels of these people, Roman said with a chuckle. Syra and Fire stood above a slain Malzeno as the curio abandoned their deceased host. So, a research team was formed and built the Elgato outpost, studying the effects Malzeno supposedly had on the wildlife around it, dealing with any issues that popped up and attempting to track down the Elder Dragon itself. And eventually, they succeeded and slayed the Scarlet Feast. But this simply caused the curio to go into overdrive, gathering up as much blood and bioenergy as they could, returning to and revitalizing Gazemagorm, who returned to cause more havoc, revealing itself as the root of the problem and Malzeno as the thing actively stopping the problem. Which makes me realize we hunters have a really bad track record of solving our problems. Mogot village was sinking. We thought it was Lagiacrus. It was Cedius. Elder dragons going crazy. We thought it was Nergigant. It was Xenojiva, and now this. We need to rethink our strategies. Sai noted as Akasha fought a Lagiacrus. Sai himself fought a Nergigant, and Syra fought Malzeno. Quite a few groans and face bombs were heard after Sai pointed out the consistent failure of hunters to get the right target. 3 times? How do you mess up 3 times to get the right target? What is wrong with these people? Winter demanded in irritation. Yeah, when you put it like that, that's a pretty big L on the hunter's part, Emerald said, laughing along with a few other students. The Cinnamon trio, on the other hand, were horrified at this revelation. So that just means some poor, innocent monsters were slain for problems they didn't cause. Velvet said sadly, "Do you hunters not do crucial information gathering before going out and killing monsters to make sure you're not taking out the wrong thing?" Kira questioned. Katana sweat dropped at this. Well, we have to make educated guesses sometimes. Things like this happen. We don't find out crucial information until we've dealt with monsters that seem to be causing the problem first. Don't blame us. Blame the people who aren't giving us the right information. We hunters are like guns. We're just pointed at something to try and kill it. It's not our fault if it's the wrong thing. The hostess said awkwardly. Syra now crouched down stealthily as she followed and observed the Elder Dragon. Now, finally, onto the Elder Dragon itself. A member of the group of kingdom monsters known as the Three Lords, alongside Garangolm and Lanagarin, the host began, briefly showing the other 2 monsters. It is as majestic as it is dangerous. A similar frame to Valkana, much more slender than most other winged quadrupedal elder dragons, with gorgeous, yet sinisterly dark silver scales. The back of its wings are a dull gray, but a vibrant red on the underside, the same with the fins on its tail, leading up to a golden hooked talon, very similar to its twisted golden horns, giant curved claws on 3 fingers of its front legs, and a 3-pronged tail. But interestingly, Malzeno looks like a Victorian aristocrat, its wings able to fold around its body like a cape, the frills on the sides of its neck looking like they form a cowl, and even the curio on its neck and chest look like a cravat, and the ones on its arms looking like ruffled wrist cuffs. Sai listed as each feature was focused on. Thankfully, the mood was brought back up with the introduction of the trio. The Three Lords. That's one of the most epic group titles I've ever heard. Young said, right? Like, that sounds like a group that should be ruling the world. Neo agreed. Lunagarin looks so amazing. He looks like the goodest boy. Weiss cooed, adoring the icy wolf. Indeed. I dearly hope we learn about it soon. Perhaps if they are safe enough for Remnant, they could even be domesticated. Winter cooed alongside her sister, imagining herself laying in bed with the frigid-fanged wyvern at night, and in the morning showing what a good boy it was with all the tricks she would teach it. A 1. I thought Garangolm was the more epic one. It was like a Rajang on steroids.
Young exclaimed.
Yeah, and look at it. It comes with its own rock armor. That's amazing. Nora cheered as well. So it's big and covered in rocks, so it's heavy. Which means it has to be strong to hold up all that weight. So it'd probably be a strong opponent. Hazel pieced together, now eager to test the beast's strength against his own. And Ruby was practically bouncing in place. Oh, man. A giant rock gorilla. What could be more amazing than that? And the Three Lords is the best title ever. Oh, I want to see more of them now. Ruby insisted. Patience is a virtue, Ruby. Katana assured her. The group then mostly nodded along with most of what Sai said, until they reached the portion of the chest and wrist fluff. Wait, that's not like furs or feathers, that's the curio. Weiss, Kira, Velvet, and Neo all cried out in fear at this. I think I retract my previous statement about wanting to use the chest fluff as a pillow, RWBY said fearfully, not wanting to lay her head upon a collection of plague-spreading leeches. But they quickly shook their heads to rid that thought from their minds and focus back on the dragon itself. Still, it is a pretty sweet-looking monster. I'm looking forward to seeing its armor. Coco praised. I guess it does have its own kind of beauty to it. I like the bits of gold on it. And the red pops pretty nice. Velvet admitted. And size description really does fit well and do it justice. This is easily one of the most regal monsters we've ever seen. I could easily see a noble or a duke dressing similarly to how Malzeno looks. Weiss agreed. Syra was now seen in combat against the Elder Dragon, most typically found in the ruins of the Citadel, but also occasionally spotted in the shrine ruins and lava caverns of Camera. Malzeno is one of the last monsters you would want to run into. They are incredibly aggressive and will attack pretty much anything they see, so the curio can drain their blood and bioenergy, further empowering the beast. This, along with its title of the embodiment of darkness, has even led to some people seeing the dragon as a vampire, which is strangely fitting and poetic in a way, as Malzeno gained these powers by inheriting the curio from Gazemagorm, the archdemon of the abyss, much like how Dracula gained his powers and became a vampire from a deal with the devil. The Sapphire Star explained as his daughter did her best to avoid the beast's attacks. A few felt a shiver up their spines at Gazemagorm's title, the archdemon of the abyss. That's definitely not doing my concerns about this guy any favors, Summer said, feeling a heavy sense of foreboding. Indeed, anything that has demon in the title is probably not something to mess with. Ren agreed, and hearing how Malzeno attacks everything for the curios to get him more blood and power made almost everyone shiver. Okay, yeah, I'd definitely say it's fair to call this guy a vampire. We better get plenty of garlic if this thing shows up on Remnant, John said nervously. Somehow, I highly doubt that will work, Penny said in concern. So, since he's comparing Malzeno to this Dracula, I'm guessing he's a vampire, too. Maybe even their first vampire, since he got his powers from the devil, not by being bitten by another vampire. Cinder pieced together. Then, he must be Earth's version of Count Vladimir, Blake said, referencing Remnant's most famous vampire. That's a pretty neat comparison, then. I like it, she added, the other vampire lovers nodding. Syra continued to dodge attacks from the Elder Dragon while pelting it with arrows. So, it's aggressive and attacks as soon as it sees something. So what exactly can you expect an attack from a Malzeno to look like? Well, it has the standard moves one might expect from Elder Dragons of that frame, the standard bites and claw swipes, but it is also a surprisingly elegant fighter, almost like a fencer, using its tail for swift and deadly thrusts. And the fingers of its wings aren't connected in the same way as most other dragons of their frame, giving them a much wider range of motion, similar to Namiel, allowing it to use them in combat to stab down directly with the hooks, or sink them into the ground and drag them across in large sweeping motions, tearing up the ground as it goes in case it just misses a hunter. And it's highly agile in the air, allowing it to charge through the air while spiraling like Legiana, or do a front flip to slam its tail down on you, then thrust it forward at speeds almost too fast to react to. Sai warned as all of the attacks he listed were shown. Pretty smart, using its wings like that. Color me impressed, Crow said. But that just means it's one more set of dangerous limbs to watch out for in a fight, Ironwood pointed out in concern. You say that like it's a bad thing, Crow countered with a smirk. I must admit, I'm quite impressed with its movement. Everything is so precise. No effort wasted. Take note, students. This is something you should all strive towards, Glinda told them, to which they either nodded or groaned. Not to mention so elegant, such graceful technique. It might even be as noble and honorable of a fighter as me, Weiss said, to which the rest of her team rolled their eyes. Then, many of their jaws dropped when they saw its flipping tail slam. Whoa, that was like 0 to 100 in half a second. That's insane. It might even be faster than your moon slice, Adam. Ilya told him, well, if they're brought to Remnant, we'll have to test that theory. Adam accepted the challenge, even if there wasn't really a challenge actually posed. Malzeno's attacks then started to become more vicious and underhanded. But despite what I just said about Malzeno being an elegant fencer, it's not afraid to fight dirty, spinning with its tail extended for massive sweeping attacks with huge range, or stabbing its wing spikes into the ground and ripping them forward to tear through the ground in a wave towards its target. In addition, it's also a practitioner of the dragon element, able to send vertical blades of black energy towards its target, a beam sent into the ground that causes shockwaves, or even infuse the energy into its curio companions and launch small groups of them at you as giant balls of dragon energy. And I mentioned before that its tail is dexterous, to the point it can grab things with it, including you. He also has an attack where he pins you to the ground, then grab you in its hand and, well, I did call it a vampire. The host said ominously as the dragon grabbed Syra in its hand and brought her to its face, closing its wings around them, at which a sound was heard like someone slurping through a straw. Many were surprised by this sudden heel turn, going from honorable fencer to dirty street brawler at the drop of a hat. But some found this quite amusing. As much of an honorable and noble fighter as you, huh? I didn't know you could be so devious in combat, Schnee, Emerald said with a smirk. Quiet, you.
Weishuft.
Hey, it's doing what it has to in order to win the fight. No rules in nature, only survival. Gotta respect that. Roman said with a nod of approval. No, you don't. Weiss and the Cinnamon Trio all complained. Then, they saw the monster's use of dragon energy, particularly the attacks involving the curio. Well, that is quite a creative use of its element. I doubt many other creatures would expect such an attack. Ashvin admitted, and the energy blades are pretty cool. John admitted. Then, they saw the grabbing attack and quickly pieced together the dragon was sucking blood right out of Syra's veins. And for once, the audience came to a complete agreement. Nope, they all said, none of them fancying having their blood drained by a dragon. Malzeno then struck Firerain with its flipping tail stab, before the scene switched to her falling unconscious later on. In addition, Malzeno also can inflict you with the same deathly virus carried by the curio. But you can also be inflicted with a condition known as blood blight, which slowly drains your health. But strangely enough, attacking your enemy and drawing blood while inflicted with blood blight has been reported to restore your vitality as you absorb the blood you have drawn. So, in a way, you become the vampire. But still, unless you're constantly on the attack, this is a serious detriment. So it's a good idea to get rid of it quickly, for which you will need an antidobra, a cobra that doesn't spit venom, but instead a green mist that cures just about any ailment. Sai informed as Syra stood in front of a cobra that its back turned to her, trying to scare her off with the scary face on the back of its hood. Many of them had to do a double take at this. A cobra, that cures ailments? Not causes them. Did I hear that right? Weiss asked, struggling to process the information. You definitely heard that right. I'm having a hard time believing it too. But that's what he said. Run said, equally stunned. Well, that's easily the coolest thing ever. Dig the scary face too. Yang said. Suddenly, Malzeno released a burst of energy before starting to glow red. And after the curio have gathered and given him enough bioenergy, Malzeno enters a state known as the Bloodening. The sapphire star demonic with an ominous echo to his voice as the dragon roared. During this state, Malzeno doubles up his efforts to kill his foe. No, literally, he doubles up almost all his attack. 2 flipping tail slam stabs, 2 bites, 2 dragon energy waves, etc. And his dragon element attacks become much more devastating, especially his ultimate move, where he breathes a beam of dragon energy around him in a beam, before breathing it straight down into a giant energy ball, which then explodes and sends blades of dragon energy everywhere. Oh, and did I forget to mention in this mode, he can teleport. Sai questioned as, indeed, the dragon appeared to teleport in a flash of black dragon mist. A familiar bearded man on his couch looked shocked at this. "Excuse me, the fuck just say?" he asked in pure disbelief, struggling to register what he was just told. Many were left in shock or awe from this new form, either amazed or highly unnerved by the transformation, or absolutely horrified in the case of Velvet, Ilya, and Blake, all 3 Faunus girls leaping behind the couch. "My prey instincts are going haywire," Velvet cried out. "I know. My instincts are screaming at me to run, but I know there's nowhere to run here." Velvet shrieked as well. "This thing's a demon." Blake whimpered fearfully.
No.
"It's awesome." Ruby cried out in amazement. "Yeah, it looks like it was done playing like yesterday." Yang said in awe. "And now, this is where the Real fight begins. And I can't wait to see what this new form does for it." Adam said eagerly, wanting to fight the beast along with the other thrill seekers. "So, Ruby, do you remember back with Baragaro? I told you that you'd love Malzeno? Well, this is why." She told the young Reaper. Ruby had stars in her eyes upon seeing this. But then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone in a burst of rose petals. And then a tink sound was heard. Looking to the source of the sound, everyone saw Ruby pressing her body into the screen like she was trying to hug Malzeno through the screen. She looked up at the beast on screen with tears of awe and wonder in her eyes. "You were right, Katana," she said with a sniff. "I think I'm in love," she said, pressing her face against the screen again. Most of the crowd face-bombed at this, as the rest of the Rose/Xiaolong/Branwen family could only wonder what was wrong with that girl, while Cinder was glaring dagger past Ruby and on the monster on screen. "If those things do wind up on Remnant, I'm making them extinct," she growled with fire in her hands. Ruby, however, rolled her eyes at Cinder and turned to her girlfriend with her own smaller glare. "Oh, get over yourself. It's not like I can make out with a monster," she snapped. "Wouldn't put it past you if you tried." Weiss muttered to herself. "But wait, I'm sorry. Did he say this thing can teleport? Please tell me I heard that wrong."
Jaune pleaded.
"I genuinely wish I could tell you that, son. But that's exactly what he said." Ironwood said in horror. The dragon was shown teleporting once again. "Okay, I am being a bit disingenuous here. It's not actual teleportation. He's just using the smoke of dragon energy to make a smoke bomb, then move from point A to point B incredibly fast. But honestly, that might actually be more scary than teleporting, because if he can move that fast, what's stopping him from attacking that fast?" The host questioned as footage slowed down to X10 revealed the dragon was actually moving from one place to another instead of teleporting. Also, just because he has a thinner frame, don't mistake him for being weaker, because he has more than enough brute force to throw Lanagran around like a ragdoll with its tail and contend with top-level threats like Valkana and even scorned Magnamalo. Sai warned as Malzeno was seen in combat against the 3 aforementioned monsters. "Oh, okay. It's just really fast. That's a bit bet." Winter sighed in relief, before Sai brought up that crucial question. "Then again, maybe not," she said nervously. "Indeed, with how powerful they are, combined with that speed, they could quite literally finish someone in the blink of an eye," Ashvin said in concern. "Unless they had a speed semblance, how could any huntsman possibly combat such speed?" Glinda asked, almost panicking. "But holy crap, did you guys see that? Even at 10x slower, It was still in front of him in like half a second. That was amazing. Neo said in awe.
So fast.
I can definitely see why people thought it was teleporting. Pyrrha admitted, a bit unnerved. Okay, when monsters come to Remnant, we need to set up something like a dog track, and then I need one of these things. Roman declared. That's so cool. It looks like me when I use my semblance. Ruby said in amazement, before gasping. Now I have to fight one of these things and find out who's faster. She declared. No, you don't. Summer cried out, grabbing and holding Ruby tightly as if she'd never let go, so she couldn't face the monster. But then, they saw the turf wars.
Lunagaron. No.
Both Shnees cried out in despair. It is able to take on Valkana. Then, perhaps that theory of it making the craters isn't too far-fetched, considering Valkana supposedly have the power to freeze over the new world. Penny noted, but that was probably a gradual process. Those pits happened all at once. I'm more impressed it can contend with scorned Magnamalo. Then how well would I be able to do against it, I wonder? Hazel asked, more eager to fight the Elder Dragon than ever. Syra was now riding in Espinas to combat the Elder Dragon. Now, all of that might sound horrifying and make you believe Malzeno is invincible, but you'll be happy to know that is not the case. In fact, Malzeno actually has a surprising number of weaknesses, being vulnerable to 3 of the 5 elements, dragon being its greatest weakness, with fire being slightly less effective and ice still being a decent choice against him. So, as long as you don't bring water or thunder weapons, you'll have a solid chance. In addition, Ice Blight is also great for quickly tiring the beast out, and Blast also does some decent damage. Also, much like an afflicted monster, if you attack the glowing parts of its body the curio are on, you can knock it out of its bloodening state. And, take out some curio too. That's always nice. The Sapphire Star advised as the Espinas toppled Malzeno, allowing Syra to jump down and fill it with arrows. Agreed. Taking out the curio should always be top priority. Weiss agreed. Exactly. In fact, I'd only be targeting the curio and not Malzeno itself. Pyrrha added. This got the two some skeptical looks. Geez, kids. I know they're creepy and everything, but chill out. You're almost sounding as bad as Jimmy and Oz with spiders. Crow told them. We are not that bad. Ashbin said, Sir, you ordered all of Beacon to be evacuated for 2 days to be bug-bombed because you saw a spider in the courtyard. Glinda reminded him, where there's one, there's always more. And the courtyard is still part of Beacon, meaning they were on the premises, likely hiding inside the school. Ashbin defended himself. Exactly. I'd do the same with Atlas. Ironwood agreed with his fellow headmaster. You have done that before, sir. Winter told him. Still, it's crazy to think such a powerful monster has so many weaknesses. John said, just goes to show, no one is really invincible. Emerald told him. Just one more thing they have in common with vampires, Blake said, looking to Ruby with a smirk. All right, I get it. She pouted. Syra was then seen standing around in armor that resembled Malzeno with a Malzeno bow drawn and ready. And, of course, the armor is amazing, exactly what you'd expect from such a gorgeous dragon, and it gives you an ability known as Blood Awakening, basically making you a vampire that steals a monster's vitality for yourself as you attack. The host praised the armor as the male version and dual blades were then shown. Everyone was in awe at both gender versions of the armor. It's beautiful, Nora said in awe. It definitely looks suited for combat, but also for ceremony or just worn as a show of status, like this is armor a noble like a duke, or even a king would wear. Weiss said, infatuated with the armor. And yet, it still has some darker undertones as a reminder of the menacing creature it came from.
Dhampir.
But that's not all. Teko told them. What if we were to tell you there's another special version of Malzeno armor? She asked, immediately getting everyone's attention. Feast your eyes, she declared, showing them the Amiibo DLC armor, which looked like the clothes of an aristocrat, exactly what one would expect a classic vampire to wear. Many were in awe of this armor, but none more so than RWBY and Coco. So beautiful, they both said, before fainting as their brains were overloaded by the armor's glory. Whoa, I expected that from RWBY, but I never thought that would happen to Coco. Young said in disbelief, along with the rest of the students, that the coolest girl in the entire school fangirled so hard she fainted. Well, you know, she loves fashion so much. She sometimes faints if clothes are too fabulous. Velvet explained as she and Cinder used smelling salts to revive their girlfriends. It's a vampire suit. RWBY cried out in amazement with stars in her eyes. Oh, man, I need that armor for Halloween, she said, having a daydream wearing the armor to Beacon's Halloween party. Daydream. Beacon was throwing its annual Halloween party, with everyone in the ballroom, appreciating each other's costumes and making small talk amongst themselves. When suddenly, the doors burst open, revealing RWBY walking in dressed in the vampiric armor, her hair grown out to make her look more mature and intimidating. Everyone's eyes were on her, marveling at her outfit, before she flashed a toothy smile with vampire fangs, causing everyone to scream and freak out in amazement over the armor. Oh, my gods! RWBY has the greatest Halloween costume of all time, one male student cried out. She's like a real vampire. And a celebrity. A celebrity vampire. A female student shrieked. The male student's eyes suddenly burst into flames, causing him to scream. Her costume is too awesome for mere mortal eyes. Another male student said while pointing at her, before screaming as his eyes burst into flames as well. And in all this chaos, RWBY laid down on a lounge chair, made of Team CDRL groveling on all fours to her, while Cinder fed her candy. End of daydream. Halloween. Girl, that outfit deserves to be on a catwalk, Coco declared, before having her own little fantasy. Daydream. A modeling show of the most famous designer in Atlas was happening, with Coco being up next as she strutted down the catwalk in the armor. And almost immediately, all of the spectators began freaking out in awe as the photographers were taking so many pictures so fast. Their flashbulbs looked like they were permanently lit up. She's a fashion goddess. One female specter cried out, "Marry me, please." Yet another female spectator pleaded, trying to climb up on stage with the fashionista. Then, several spectators started fainting. She's too fabulous to comprehend, one male spectator said, before passing out as well. Velvet then climbed onto the stage and kissed Coco as her team leader held her close, yet still managed to catch a bouquet of roses someone threw to her before passing out. End of daydream. Both girls were frozen with starry-eyed at their own fantasies, even drooling a little bit. Well, I think we lost them, Young said. But then, sad music began to play as the Malzeno was slain, slowly collapsing to the ground as the last of its strength left it. But ultimately, Malzeno's tale is a tragic one. For the Malzeno we know now only came about thanks to the curio. It used to be a peaceful monster that, while yes, was still a wild animal and defend its territory, it mostly lived in harmony with the people of the kingdom and defended the area around the kingdom that was its territory from threats, inadvertently protecting the kingdom as well, leading some to even revere it as a guardian of the kingdom, and it was believed to be a monster that kept balance in nature, similarly to Nergigant. But because of the fight with Gazemagorn, it was afflicted and forced into symbiosis with the curio, its behavior darkening as it became more sly and vicious, and even its appearance changing, its horns twisting along with its mind. It saved the kingdom, but lost its soul in the process. Sai explained sadly, even sounding like he was starting to sob as Syra even fell to all fours in remorse for slaying the elder dragon. A dark-skinned young man was seen in hysterics. "I need a moment," he declared as he tried to regain some of his composure. "That's so sad," John said as many of them started feeling sorry for the elder dragon. A few of them even started sobbing along with the host. It was protecting the kingdom, but those stupid flying leeches drove them insane, Ruby said angrily as she cried along with her mother, Velvet, and Glinda. "It's not fair. It just wanted to live in peace in its territory and Gazemagorm, and the Curio turned them into some warped predator. Why would nature ever let them happen?" Velvet cried as she hugged Coco tightly. "Sometimes, animals get too out of control even for Mother Nature to fix, kids," Summer told them, pulling her hood over her eyes as she cried. "It's a sad truth. Mishaps like these do happen, as we learned with Deviljo, and we can only hope nature creates something to counter these mishaps and restore balance, like Betelgeuse," Glinda said hopefully, dabbing tears away with a tissue. Syra was observing Malzeno from a distance once again. So, obviously, Malzeno is incredibly dangerous and aggressive and should be avoided at all costs. But like I said, this is due to the influence of the Curio. So you might be wondering, what would Malzeno be like without the Curio? Well, for that we must look no further than the legend resurrected, Primordial Malzeno. The Sapphire Star exclaimed as a new version of Malzeno was seen looking down at Syra and firing. Everyone was in awe of this new species of Malzeno. "It's beautiful, so majestic, and it's not giving off dangerous predator vibes like the first one," Blake said, amazed. "I'd say it's an improvement over the original. It almost looks divine, or like royalty at least." Weiss said, "It almost looks like a knight in armor compared to the first one." John noted, "It certainly does look bulkier and sturdier." Pira said, "I am confirming a significantly higher percentage of armor plating and muscle mass." Penny confirmed. Syra observed this new Malzeno closely while staying crouched to go unnoticed. So this Malzeno is a variant of the normal one, although it's a similar situation to Red Kazu. Red being how they normally are, but the white one being much more common, so it's considered the standard. Primordial Malzeno is how a Malzeno looks when it was first born into the world, only becoming the way a standard Malzeno is once it bonds with the Curio, but Primordial is considered the variant because, unfortunately, it's so much more common to see a Malzeno that has bonded with the flying leeches. And, as of yet, we do not know if a Malzeno will return to being a Primordial Malzeno if separated from the Curio for long enough. Sai explained as his daughter continued to tail the variant. Unfortunately, this news brought the mood back down. Why? Why is the original version so much less common? Velvet wept. Because of those cursed Curio, that's why. Pira growled, wishing she could use the flying leeches as target practice. And that means that so many young Malzeno get forced into being hosts for those monsters. They barely get a chance at life before becoming slaves for those leeches. Summer said sadly, "Katana, can we please get a training hunt where we just chase down and kill Curio?" Ruby requested. "I mean, you could, but you wouldn't really gain much experience from that," the hostess said. "But we'd gain the satisfaction of wiping out those disgusting leeches," Ruby declared in a surprisingly dark tone. The different features of this new Malzeno were now focused on as Syra observed it. So, while still the same creature, Primordial Malzeno is about as different from the original as you could imagine. Instead of the dark, sinister colors of the normal one, Primordial is a beautiful shining silver with golden edging, with much more and much thicker plating than the original to replace the Curio, almost resembling armor, giving it a more knight-like appearance as opposed to the normal vampiric one. And the ominous red is replaced by a gorgeous bluish purple, and its horns are far less twisted. and it's much larger and more muscular, giving it a much sturdier appearance to the toothpick that is normal Malzeno. The host listed off the changes as Syra now backed off to a safe distance. Yeah, I'm liking this look a lot better. That silver white matches the gold so well. Plus that bluish purple is just gorgeous. Coco said in awe, I like the less twisted horns. I know it's a small detail, but they just look way better all straight like that.
Yang note.
Likely because the twisted horns they could be used in battle if Malzeno lowered its head and charged, so they are more dangerous, whereas Primordial's straight horns are more curved back along its head, so they wouldn't be much use as weapons, so they don't pose a threat. Ashbin theorized, and I'm liking the bigger armor look. If the first one could throw Lanagaran around like a ragdoll, I bet this guy could toss around Deviljo. Crow said with a smirk. The Malzeno variant stared down Syra and Fire Rain again, but seemed to have no intent on harming them. And its behavior is also the complete opposite. Yes, it's still a wild animal and can be ruthless in defending its territory, but if you keep your distance and show it respect, it wouldn't dream of harming you. And it's even believed to be smart enough to understand human emotions, such as gratitude or hatred. And best of all, they fucking hate the Curio. Sai declared with vicious laughter as the Primordial folded its wing up almost like a sword and stabbed a Curio right out of the air. Many were amazed by how the Malzeno was able to fold its wing up like a sword, but they were even more amazed and overjoyed to see it strike down a Curio with said wing. That is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Winter said in awe, that was incredible. It was similar to Volstrax, but it didn't have to completely reconfigure the construction of its wing in order to do that. Penny analyzed in amazement. Oh, that. I thought we were just saying it's amazing that it killed a Curio. Weiss said, well, that too. Penny said awkwardly, I'm just happy this version is friendly. Maybe that means we can have it on Remnant. Ruby cheered. Syra was now seen in combat with the new Malzeno. Still, it is entirely possible you will have to fight a Primordial on occasion. So, what does this variant bring to the table? Well, whereas normal Malzeno was a fencer, Primordial Malzeno is a much more traditional knight. As I said before, its wing fingers are not traditionally connected to its wing membranes, allowing it to move them much more freely, which Primordial uses far better than normal Malzeno, turning its wings into weapons, similarly to Volstrax. The host explained as Syra was briefly shown fighting a Volstrax, which used its wings as all different kinds of weapons. It's quite impressive to see them put their natural adaptations to use so much better than the normal version. Ren admitted, agreed, but it does raise the question of why wouldn't normal Malzeno be able to do this? Ashbin admitted, it likely has something to do with being driven to insanity by the Curio. Ironwood theorized, and it's nice to see they work in defense just as much as offense. It's covering all its bases to make it a more formidable opponent. Very impressive. Cinder said, considering getting one of these dragons for herself. The Primordial thrusted its wing forward like a spear to kill a Curio again, before being shown fighting Syra again. Now, obviously, it can't completely copy Volstrax and reconfigure its wings to reach, like, 3 times its body length. But they can still be used by folding its wings up to become like swords, perfect for thrusting, slashing, or slamming down on an opponent. It also uses its wings as shields, both to protect itself and charge down and ram an opponent, while also using its tail as a spear for thrusting, sweeping, and even grabbing you, then dropping you to the ground like a piece of trash. I haven't seen a creature that disrespectful since Velvet. The Sapphire Star exclaimed said as picture of a girl with bunny ears was seen. And no, not that one. Velvet with 2 T's and an E at the end. Sai corrected, a demonic fashionista being shown instead. Yes, that's the one. He confirmed as the demon girl was getting right up in another demon's face. Velvet gasped when she was apparently called out for being disrespectful. What did I do? She asked innocently, tearing up at thinking she somehow wronged or disrespected someone. Oh, he'd better take that back real fast, before I show him how disrespectful I can be. Coco snapped. Yeah, no one hurts Velvet's feelings like that. Get ready for war. RWBY began, before the other girl of a similar name was shown. Oh, she said simply at the mistake being cleared up. Yang, Roman, and Neo were all laughing at this. My goodness, Red. So quick to jump to violence. I thought you huntresses were the good guys. Roman taunted. How shameful. Neo added dramatically. Yeah,
Sis.
I thought you were the least hostile person I know. I am disillusioned right now, Yang said, equally dramatic. This got a few chuckles, but the calmer of the cast just shook their heads at this. Regardless, it's still nice to see them use all their appendages to a higher degree of efficiency. Once again, students, take notes and think of how you can improve your own fighting style by better incorporating full use of your limbs. Glinda said, not missing the opportunity for a teaching moment. The primordial Malzeno was holding a scorned Magna Malo back with its dragon breath. And it does still seem to have access to its dragon element, but it hardly seems to use it unless absolutely necessary, preferring an honorable bout of pure strength. And you might be thinking that without the benefits of the curio, but let me assure you, that is absolutely not the case. The curio have become something of a crutch for normal Malzeno to lean back on, not having to rely on their natural strength. So, much like if you don't go to the gym and use your muscles and strength, you gradually lose them. So too did normal Malzeno lose its strength, to the point their armor plating even degraded as it started to weigh them down. But Primordial, who does use its natural strength and durability, is on another level. Case in point, a Valkana is a worthy foe for a normal Malzeno, but Primordial Malzeno absolutely dominates the Iceborn Wyvern. The host declared as, indeed, a Primordial Malzeno defeated a Valkana with little effort, while a normal Malzeno was evenly matched. I never thought a dragon would be a kindred soul to me. But yes, pure strength should be the focus unless the need arises for one to use every last bit of their power. Hazel agreed. Agreed. I'm definitely preferring this version now for not needing those leeches to fall back on. Adam agreed. Yeah, it's definitely better for it. Look at those muscles. I bet he could even handle Nora's workout, no problem, Blake said, shuddering at the memory of the drills Nora put her, Yang and RWBY through. But wow, I knew he said it was stronger and everything, but that's still insane that it so easily beats an opponent its counterpart struggles against. Kira said, amazed. Yes, how lovely for it, Katana said through gritted teeth, her eye twitching at the sight of her favorite monster getting annihilated. The fight between Syra and Primordial Malzeno was interrupted as the Curio suddenly swarmed the Elder Dragon. But the Curio do not like that this stronger version of one of their natural symbiotic partners refused to join them, and thus they will stop at nothing trying to overtake him. And while he can normally stave off an attack from them, should he get distracted by a fight and lose focus, the Curio can get to him, attempting to bond with him, which will force him into the bloodening state. The Sapphire Star explained as the dragon entered the sinister transformation. Oh, come on. Those that particularly hate the Curios, Weiss, Velvet, Pyrrha, James, complained all at once. Once again, those flying leeches ruin everything.
Weiss snapped.
I can't believe they've even found a way to corrupt something this majestic and pure. Pyrrha seethed. I mean, like he said, it is the same species as their best partners. It makes sense. Emerald admitted. Doesn't mean we have to like it. Velvet grumbled. I'm honestly just impressed they can hold off the Curio's assaults for so long under normal circumstances. Ironwood said, giving the Malzeno a nod of respect. Syra was now desperately evading the dragon's much more violent assault. You may think at this point it would just fight like a regular Malzeno, but no. It still keeps its normal set of skills, but also adds the skills of a normal Malzeno on top of it, teleporting and doubling up its attacks. And now, they're much more willing to use their dragon element, and with far more control over it, such as readying 3 dragon-charged Curio Spheres that will fire giant beams of dragon energy as well. It also does a similar ring of dragon energy, but rather than a downward beam to detonate it, it slams both wings down, sending dragon blades in all directions. And, of course, its ultimate attack, where it takes to the sky and rains down countless balls of dragon energy that become blades and travel in all directions upon hitting the ground, before the primordial Malzeno teleports just above its chosen target and unleashes a burst of dragon energy that puts Teostra's supernova to shame. Sai warned as the attacks he mentioned were shown. Holy cats, that's amazing. Its bloodening is even better than normal Malzeno's. Ruby cried out with stars in her eyes. Curio balls that shoot dragon beams? That's so hardcore.
Yang exclaimed in amazement.
Indeed. I know I said it was better off without the curio, but I can't deny the energy blades never fail to impress. Adam admitted. And that ultimate attack. It almost reminds me of a bullet hell game, dodging dozens of raining spheres and all of the dragon blades they make and a big explosion. That's gotta be up there for the greatest attack we've ever seen. Definitely top 10 after ones that wipe out the whole battlefield like Vitalis, Elatrian, and Safi. Pro praise. How are all of you not realizing the immense danger that comes from these attacks? Winter demanded. I'm afraid I have to agree. We may find it impressive, but that's only because we're watching it behind the safety of a screen. Ashvin said, agreed. I'm sure if we were there to witness it for ourselves, it would be infinitely less epic and far more terrifying. Ren agreed. Or, infinitely more epic because it's far more terrifying. You gotta get the blood pumping sometimes, Rennie. That's how you live a little. Nora told him. Suddenly, the Malzeno transformed into an even darker form. But eventually, after being injured enough, primordial Malzeno will enter a new form known as Bloodlust, where the excess bioenergy from the curio actually seems to burn it, its scales going completely black and its wing membranes, mouth, head crest and gaps between its scales start to glow brightly with fiery orange light, almost like a risen elder dragon. In this state, it becomes even more powerful and aggressive, and it seems to master how to use the curio, mixing its dragon powers and ability to teleport perfectly with its natural physical skill to make it an absolute nightmare to fight. The host explained as his daughter weathered the assault while trying to land her own attacks. Whoa, it's like Pyrrha, if she were a dragon, and went totally berserk. Yang said, shuddering at the memory of Pyrrha practically crushing her in a ball of cement and rebar during a capture the flag sparring session between their two teams. A 1. I don't believe it. Such ferocity and brute strength. But even so, and with its mind corrupted by the curio, it's still able to use such skill and precision. It should be impossible to blend those two things so seamlessly. Glinda said, truly odd, but also unnerved by the equal level of power and skill the creature was displaying while losing its mind from the flying leeches. Whoa, I wonder if I can use my semblance like that. Ruby wondered in amazement, watching the dragon striking, teleporting away and coming in from a different angle with a different attack, and imagining herself doing something similar. It's certainly possible, but it would require a great deal of practice, and you would likely have to worry about overusing your aura reserves. Penny pointed out. Either way, let's just all agree we never want to be on the wrong side of this onslaught. Roman said, everyone nodding in agreement. The Malzeno then seemed to be struggling in its bloodlust state. Again, I know this is absolutely haunting at this point, but remember, no monster is truly invincible and primordial Malzeno is no exception. It still shares all the same elemental weaknesses, and almost all ailments except for exhaust are decently effective, with blast being highly effective. And just like normal Malzeno, primordial can be knocked out of the bloodening state by attacking its glowing parts. But most notably, once it reaches the bloodlust state, it actively tries to fight the influence of the curio, leaving it open for attack, and, on very rare occasions, it's even possible to totally free them from the influence of the curio. The sapphire star informed as Syra struck the monster once more, freeing it from the curio, at which point it fled the area. Oh, thank goodness. It can be saved from the curio. Velvet sighed in relief, before smiling as she watched the creature fly away. But he said that was rare, Bun Bun. So, don't get your hopes too high. I'd hate to see that cute little face of yours look disappointed. Coco told her softly. Still, it's awesome they still fight the curio's control. Never give up, Malzeno.
Jaune Chéred.
They refuse to bend their will to those monsters. I only wish I had even half that determination. Cinder said, a twinge of guilt returning as she remembered how easily she joined Salem. Syra was then holding a primordial Malzeno bow at the ready, while wearing glorious armor resembling the monster. And once again, the armor is absolutely beautiful, perfectly befitting of a regal and noble knight. The host gushed over the armor once again as the male variation and the dual blades with it were shown. If they loved the normal Malzeno armor, the group absolutely adored both versions of this armor. This time, it was the Shnees who almost fainted from its beauty, but they managed to pull themselves back. It's glorious. I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life, Weiss said with stars in her eyes, before noticing Penny's cross look at her.
Oh,
Any non-living thing so beautiful in my life. And robot or not, I consider you to be alive. She corrected herself. It is certainly quite amazing. And I like how it offers protection for the entire body. The head armor of the female set of normal Malzeno offer only had a tiara that doesn't cover or protect much. Penny said, it's absolutely flawless. Something like this should never be worn into battle where it could be damaged. It should be preserved and displayed behind glass where it could never be so much as scratched. Winter declared, I might consider modeling our next versions of Elysian Nights after this. Ironwood agreed. Ooh, I might even wear that. Finally have my full body covered in armor instead of just my chest. And, you know, really sell that knight look. John said, taking a pose like what he's seen knights do in pictures and statues. Syra and Fire Eye now fought alongside the Malzeno against the Curio. But ultimately, despite how powerful and dangerous this Malzeno can be, it does have a vital role in the world. Again, even though it is likely only trying to protect its territory, Primordial Malzeno is aware of the threats dangerous creatures like Gazemagorm and the Curio present and fights fiercely to drive off the subterranean Elder Dragon and does all it can to purge any Curio in the environment it can find, which has the happy little benefit of assisting the kingdom and surrounding territories. So it is undoubtedly a balancing force in nature, similarly to Nergigant, albeit less. Deliberately. And it is even aware when people are trying to help it, such as when my daughter Syra and Dame Firerain fought the Curio in order to protect Primordial Malzeno, the creature even silently thanking them with a nod before going to purge the rest of the Curio. So, in a way, it earns its title as the Guardian Knight of the Kingdom. Sai finished as the dragon took to the skies and flew into the sunset. Yes, down with the Curios. Weiss, Kira, and Velvet cried out. This is now officially my second favorite monster of all time. Kira said, I must get one as soon as we get back to Remnant. Weiss agreed. That's so cool how it protects the ecosystem and the balance of nature. It's a hero like Nergigant. Ruby cheered. Yeah, so if they fight threats like the Curio, I'd love to see what they do against the Grim. Summer said with a smile. Ooh, and since it's smart enough to know when we're helping it, then it would let us help fight Grim, too. Or maybe even jump in to help us. Ruby said, once again having stars in her eyes. Geez, I think there's been more stars in your eyes this viewing than in the actual night sky. Razara said. Still, it is quite amazing to see even a dragon, such as this, capable of understanding and showing gratitude when someone comes to its aid. Ashvin said with a smile. And that title is amazing. The Guardian Knight of the Kingdom. It's like it's made for Remnant. They could be the guardian knights of our kingdoms. Ruby said happily. One final beautiful shot of this magnificent creature flying into the sunset. A wonderful point to end on. Glinda said warmly, nodding in approval. So, what dash Katana began to ask, before Ruby was immediately in her face. I love it. She screamed. I love both versions. I mean, normal Malzeno's story is super sad and everything, but it's still a literal vampire dragon. That's so cool, she said excitedly, bouncing in place. I don't think I can even begin to voice my love and admiration for primordial Malzeno. It perfectly fits the description of a noble and dutiful knight. It has my utmost respect.
Weiß deklaret.
Agreed. The fact that it was grateful towards Syra and Dame Firerain for saving it, even after having been in a fight with it moments earlier, is truly a testament to its intelligence, understanding, and honorable nature. Winter said, emphatically agreeing with her sister. Indeed, anything that puts its own life and sanity on the line should be worthy of praise. And anything that targets the Curio specifically has my respect. Ironwood agreed. Protecting simply human life would be worthy enough for praise, but it defends the very balance of nature itself. Ashvin said, I mean, sure, Sai did point out a few times it was probably just being an animal and defending its territory, but come on. If it knows emotions like gratitude and hatred and big things like how the Curio threaten the natural order, then surely it must have some kind of sense or desire to protect people, right? Summer added, quite. Not to mention, as James said, it is quite brave and heroic to put its life on the line threatening things that can wipe out ecosystems like the Curio, or things that can create massive craters like Gazemagorn. Glinda tacked on as well. And back to normal Malzeno, how can we forget that epic Tux armor? Coco said, oh yeah, we need that armor, Katana. Please. Ruby pleaded. Katana rolled her eyes, but smiled. Fine, you brats, she said good-naturedly, snapping her fingers and dressing the two in the elegant armor, much to their overwhelming joy. Nah, too fancy for my liking, Yang said dismissively, and I still prefer Primordial's armor. It just looks so pure and awe-inspiring. Weiss gushed over the armor of the variant species. Exactly. If the god of light wore clothes, that would be what he would wear. Winter said, nodding vigorously in agreement. Don't think his antlers would fit in the helmet. Teko said, I know we already considered putting up statues of Kushala Daora around the kingdom, but now I'm thinking we would have primordial Malzeno statues by every important building and facility in Atlas. Make it the kingdom symbol. It's almost a perfect example of Atlas, responsible duty-bound to protect against the forces of darkness. Ironwood said, I can certainly see the connection. Malzeno defends against the Curio, while Atlas fights the Grim. Ashvin put the pieces together. But still, I just feel bad for normal Malzeno. It was a peaceful monster, until it was forced to become a host for those damn leeches. Velvet snapped, more hostile than anyone had heard her before, and getting blamed for all the problems Gazemagorm and the Curios caused. Seriously, how do they think one dragon caused a plague and made craters in it at least twice its size? Pyrrha questioned. Yeah, I'm thinking you guys skipped the hypothesis portion of your research gathering and just stopped at Malzeno is the source. Roman agreed. Like I said, sometimes we only find out new information after the fact. Katana said. Katana was then back in the hostess space with her hands clasped together. So, Katana, can we please get primordial Malzeno on Remnant? I know normal Malzeno is a no-go because of the curio, and we can absolutely never let them on our world, but primordial is perfect. It's peaceful, so we shouldn't have to worry about it destroying settlements for no reason. Oh, please, 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 please. RWBY begged. But then, to everyone's surprise, Weiss suddenly zoomed up right beside RWBY, with her hands clasped together as well. RWBY's right, so we know it's likely not going to cause any harm, but it may even prevent harm by fighting against the grim and protecting settlements outside of the kingdoms. And it might even keep other monsters in check, like Nergigant. It could be like a guardian like it is in your world. Remnant could only benefit from having primordial Malzeno there. Besides, it's just a glorious marvel that should be beheld by everyone. Weiss begged even harder than RWBY. Enough, Katana said, holding up a hand to stop them from talking. The two girls looked at her, sweating bullets as they feared a possible denial, before Katana smiled at them. I was already planning on adding them to the roster. Don't worry, she said, before gasping as both girls cheered and tackled her in a massive hug, both repeating thank you, almost faster than the ice demoness could process. Oh yeah, awesome.
Young Che.
I hope we get to see them when we go out on missions. Nora said hopefully. As Weiss said, I hope they may even provide assistance on missions. Pyrrha said, equally hopeful. Yeah, and I could always turn into a bird and watch them in the trees. They never suspect a thing while I basically get a front row seat to a documentary that could turn into a wrestling match at any time if it runs into any monsters it clashes with. Crow said. There were many other agreements as everyone looked around, sharing some eager smiles, before Glinda and Winter's gazes stopped on Ironwood as they saw the look in his eyes. Sir, don't even think about it, Winter said. I have no idea what you mean, Schnee. He denied. Don't play dumb with us, James Ironwood. You are forbidden from even attempting to capture and use Malzenos for your own gain. Even if you have people's best interests in mind, like having them as border patrols for the kingdom, these magnificent creatures already go out of their way to keep people and the balance safe. There is no reason to force them into the role, nor do they deserve such treatment. They are to be respected at all times. Glinda snapped like a mother scolding their child. Why yes, ma'am, he said nervously. Yeah, that might just make them believe Atlas needs to be wiped out. There's an old fairy tale about the kingdom and Malzeno. When the people's hearts are full of darkness, the archdemon of the abyss shall rise and call forth the demon lord, who will pass divine judgment and bring down his silver spears to bring ruin on those deserving. Rosara told them. So, in other words, behave of primordial will destroy your ass. Teko added. The adults gulped at this. Duly noted. Ironwood said, oh, man, I so need to get a primordial Malzeno. I'll have to come up with a really elegant name. Something that starts with Sir, you know? Something that really fits the night motif. RWBY said excitedly. So, what will we be seeing next? Summer asked, hoping for a relatively calm, peaceful and simple monster after everything they witnessed with both versions of Malzeno. Oh, I think this is another one the Schnees will like. It's a bit more fiery than you guys would prefer, but it is also quite beautiful and elegant, as well as being full of surprises. Katana said, I'm looking forward to it already. Winter said, Weiss nodding along. Very well, then. I hope you guys are looking forward to what Aknasim brings to the table. Katana told them, starting the video.